get started off with a welcome to this year. What is a special end of year event, and it's been titled "What Does 2021 Bring for Irish Builders, Developers, and Construction Companies?" And before we dive in, I would like to thank some sponsors, being the CIF and Clondalkin Building Providers. So we in Live Cost, we've put on 40 events. I had to look back and had a look at this year through interviews and one-to-one interviews and webinars, etc. And for a small business to maintain that has actually been pretty difficult. But we are delighted that them good intentions have been noticed, and we thank the CIF and the Clondalkin Building Providers for giving us a bit of backup on this one. So thanks again. I mentioned them 40 plus events, which are generally one-to-one stuff. And we like to sit down with interesting people doing interesting things in constructions. And to wrap up this crazy year, as I said, we wanted to bring it all to a point where we could talk to interesting people and figure out what does 2021 bring for Irish builders, developers, and construction companies, because there's a lot of different talk out there. So can we put it all together and get some sort of consensus? And to do that, I am delighted to be joined by James Benson, who's a Director of Housing at the CIF, Peter Finn, Director at MDS Construction, and many will recognise Peter from his time on Room to Improve and currently on Home Rescue. Keith Kelliher, who's a Chartered Quantity Surveyor and also accredited adjudicator, arbitrator, and accredited mediator, and Tomas MacEoin, who's the MD of the McKeon Group and also the CEO of Here Works. You're all very, very welcome, and thanks for putting your time into this. I do appreciate it. The goal here today is quite simple: share the current landscape. What's it look like from real people that are in the trenches? And we're also going to put some polls together. So people that are on, we want to get a good idea of what people are thinking as well. So when them polls pop up, please contribute and give us your thoughts. And we're also recording this, so if there's anyone on here that feels that this will be benefit to their company or maybe someone in another company, hang around to the end and we'll let you know about how you can sort of take the recording and share it out there. So let's kick off then. It's very difficult to kick off into what's going on next year without having a quick chat about how this year was for a lot of us. And having spoke to you all individually through the summer, I was impressed with the reaction to COVID. Tomas, I'm going to start with yourself. You created an innovation culture prior to COVID and already had systems in place to shift to a work from home model. What was the idea behind creating and pushing for a culture of innovation? And what does that even look like? And what's been the results of that?
Yeah, well, I said, thanks, Kieran. I suppose McKeon Group has always been somewhat innovative. Even, I suppose, we're third generation now, even going back to my grandfather in the 1950s. He changed and pivoted many times. When times got tough, he was obviously a general contractor. He used to build schools and houses, etc. But at one stage, he was making his own blocks. At other stages, he was, when work was tough on the ground, he moved to turning brush handles for what was the HSE at the time, to making ladders for, I think it was one of the education boards. So we always had that culture of innovation. But as we grew, we kind of struggled to say, well, how do we actually really embed this in as we grow and as we've more managers and more people? We actually got involved with Enterprise Ireland, and we started a couple of courses. We did, I think it was the Go Global for Growth, and then we did Innovation for Growth. And we met a guy actually called Fergal Brophy at one of them, and I kept in close contact with him, and we actually just sought to actually set up a kind of an innovation committee. We actually call it Innovation Boost, so it doesn't sound like a committee, but we created this group within the McKeon Group to actually enable people, to give people the headspace to actually work on new things, to go out and empathize with the different site managers, with the different tradespeople, with our whole teams, to actually see they're the people who actually see the problem in our processes and how we can actually improve. So we had that set up just prior to COVID, really the end of last year. Around this time last year, we started getting that and those conversations flowing. So when COVID hit off, we were quickly able to mobilize and actually see, what solutions could we bring to the fore. And I suppose the big one for us was safe return to site. And we actually developed our own app in-house that we called Good to Go, which is a grown leg, which since more features, but it's all around It's all around, I suppose the apps are commonplace now. We see them now at the GAA, but at the time there was nothing on the market. It was actually, how do we make sure that, people coming to site are COVID free, and how do we record it, and how do we actually maintain a database of who has been in contact with whom and on what sites.
And that was something that you developed yourself in-house?
Yeah, so again, the committee kind of came up with it, and then we were able to quickly. We actually used we're an Office 365 house, so we use Microsoft Power Apps, and we've our technology division as well, so we were able to leverage the skills there to actually quickly develop the app in house, and that's what we did. I think we had it rolled out from concept to this first version in something like 2 days.
Yeah, I mean, it was. I suppose, Peter, for you, we've all seen Home Rescue, which is currently running on RTE. That looked like children through the summer, which I'd imagine with challenges in terms of new safety requirements for doing such small projects, condensed spaces. Was there any concerns that that was going to be pulled this season?
Yeah, there was huge concerns. The whole COVID situation threw a question mark over the whole team, because not only did you have the construction element, but you also had the film crew element of it as well. So a lot of preparation had to go into place, and a lot of protocols had to be put in place. But we already had those protocols in place on site on our general day-to-day stuff, and that had been very successful. And I suppose our industry was in a strong position in that over the last decade in particular, the health and safety has increased and has become, so well streamlined, even on small sites, that the transition, into COVID protocols was actually relatively easy. Obviously, once we got a bit of preparation done, and in fairness to the CIF there, I'm throwing okays here, as you know, James, but the CIF were very good. They gave us clear guidelines fairly quickly, and I know that other industries didn't get that support. So it didn't make it easy, but it certainly helped a lot, So that was certainly a big help to us. And then we basically worked with Coco Television and RTE to make sure that all the protocols were, worked together with themselves. So it led to a very interesting year, and it certainly made things a little bit more difficult on site when we were filming the show, but thankfully we were able to continue on site in our normal day-to-day fairly quickly once the government restrictions allowed us to do so.
You certainly weren't the first person that I've heard compliment the CIF in terms of their reaction and how quick they put together the standard operating procedures document. James, I mean, were you involved in that particular play? I mean, how quick and what effort was involved in putting together such a document at such a pace and getting it out to those who needed it?
Look, I think it was all shoulders to the wheel for everyone. I don't think it was just, it was like CIF internally and the members themselves and those within the industry. I think like really the industry is a community, really, not to sound too aspirational or soppy on it, but you've what Peter good work that he does throughout the years. This community relies on community spirit. I think everyone within the industry sort of knows themselves. We've all crossed paths. I've been on site for Tomas doing work directly back in the day, before this, my current vein, but everyone knows each other. And I think that sort of community spirit led very quickly to being able to put together a standard operating procedure. What led to it, I suppose, there was a committee. We have obviously the Health and Safety Committee within CIF. We probably had 60 volunteers at the time to get down and dirty very quickly to produce that standard operating procedure that was adopted. There was a lot of work that did get involved to it, but it would have been futile without those on the ground implementing it the way they did up and down the country without question. It was adopted. We saw very, 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 if any, cases of where people weren't in compliance. Now, I suppose when you take stock of what's happened in the last year, we were look back only 6-7 months ago, we were in a position where we couldn't operate. We weren't designated as essential unless you were doing construction work specifically related to health services. In the last lockdown, in level 5 restrictions, we were classified as essential. And to get that categorization right up to level 5, I think is a testament to the low number of cases that we've seen within the sector, within the industry, and that's a result of what people were doing on the ground. It was actually, as a case, it was probably safer to be actually operating on site because of the procedures that were in place than actually, your day-to-day living after work. So it was really down to the testament of what everyone was doing and the members were doing on the ground. So, you know, you can produce anything, but unless there's take up for it. And as Peter said, thankfully, the industry had made great advances in the last 10 years on health and safety. Without that, you know, there was many other sectors that were going from a standing start to try and catch up on this. So between our own technology and health and safety, thankfully, we were in the position to be able to operate.
Yeah, it definitely feels like we had a head start there in terms of health and safety and putting together quick protocols. And when you're generally a safe industry anyway, it feels that we tend to have that bit of a head start, you say. One of the areas where there was big questions, and Keith, I'll fire this across yourself, like when lockdown came, we experienced instant delays, questions around contracts. We spoke at the time around the words force majeure. You had to give me a bit of an education about what all that might mean at the time. But thinking back to lockdown and coming out of lockdown, was there many companies contacting you with concerns around the contracts and as we reopened through into May?
Yeah, look, it was like Armageddon for the first few weeks. You know, we could have nearly just had people operating a phone service really at the start. But I think once it settled down, I think it was the initial thing was force majeure. You know, it's an unknown entity. It found its way into contracts. It's traditionally came from a French kind of idea, and that term has found its way into particularly our RAI standard form of contract, but there's no definition, there's no court cases in Ireland in respect to what it means, what way the courts would view it, and really nobody really knew. You know, even some of the finest construction law minds in Ireland were writing blogs and going on this and that and not really being able to kind of steer people, you know, exactly as to what this will actually mean. And that uncertainty was the biggest issue for people. I suppose the fragrance of different types of contracts that we have in Ireland between subcontractors and the range of different main contracts we have was also a concern, and in terms of how do individual contractors deal with it, and whether clients were going to cooperate with builders, you know, or whether they were going to, you know, use it as an opportunity to bring down costs. So that uncertainty, all of that uncertainty was really, it was a big worry for a lot of people at the start. I suppose we look back at a scenario where, to be fair, the construction industry have just put their shoulder to the wheel. They've suffered the cost because outside of the government and the ex gratia payment, you know, outside of some private individuals maybe doing one-off deals or whatever with the industry have had to carry that cost and continue to carry that cost and will continue to carry that cost into the future. And it is a big issue. It's an issue that won't go away because, you know, our contract simply didn't allow contractors to cover the cost of implementing the CIF protocol, as an example. You know, all of the bits that go with that. The contract simply didn't allow contractors a way to get that money back. And hence the ex gratia payment came into discussion, because the government knew themselves that their contracts didn't allow for this, so they had to in some way you know, come back to the industry and give them money. But private clients in the main haven't done that. A lot of them wouldn't be in a position to do that, and the delays to the projects, you know, will have obviously had an impact on clients as well in terms of finance and everything else. So the things, I suppose most people got the time never became an issue. I haven't heard of anybody who has had to fight for the time that COVID closed them down. But not a lot of people have got finance, you know, for that time or for the cost of the, you know, implementing the protocols and things like that. So it is an issue, and it will be one, you know, going on into the future.
How has that impacted you, Tomas? I mean, what's been the impact of COVID on your projects and about your business overall?
Yeah, well, I suppose during the initial lockdown, Kieran, we obviously turnover just went to pretty much zero. And you know, as you say, it was that panic stations and what's going to go here. There was the initial scramble for, okay, we need to get as much money in as possible. We were all feared that people wouldn't pay. That didn't actually materialize, and our worst cash flow projections, I think, allowed for only 50% or 60%, I think it was, of receipts. I believe at the work, you know, it all came in, and not particularly slow, and I've heard that throughout the industry. So I suppose our worst fears in that regard weren't realized. But what did happen, and what's still happening to a degree, is that work we had won, or work we even won over the lockdown period, because there was a lot of consultants put a lot of work into, you know, getting jobs out for pricing. We won some of them, but they never materialized and they never went ahead. And it's not that they're cancelled or not going ahead; they're just being pushed on and delayed month on month. And that seems to be a recurring theme. Actually, it improved a little at the start of level 5, and my gut feeling there is that the economy kind of said, well, look, this is the worst that it's going to get. You know, this is level 5. It's not as bad as we thought. We actually, at the start of level 5, if you'd spoken to me, I was panicking. About 4 weeks later, I was a lot happier, and we're a lot happier into Q1 now. There's still a lot of projects that were delayed. There were projects cancelled. We had a couple of large public contracts, multi-million contracts that were cancelled indefinitely. So, you know, that initial panic was terrible, but it is starting to move now. But I will say, every month I look at our pipeline, and a lot of it's just moving on month by month. So it looks very healthy, but the decisions aren't happening.
What about yourself, Peter? What have you experienced similar? Like what's been the impact of COVID, say, on your projects and business overall?
Yeah, well, we obviously had that very uncertain moment when we were just all told on that Friday afternoon that we had to shut our sites down. Bit of panic stations. You didn't even know whether you were going to be allowed to go back to your site and lock it down properly. All that type of stuff went on. Then we got through that, and then a bit like what Keith was talking about earlier on. Then you were thinking about what way was the contract going to work. Would there, you know, how long was it going to go on for? Were clients going to start pushing to still make it finish the same deadlines? All of those things came into play. Now, thankfully, I think the whole country and, like, let's be honest, the whole globe realised that this was a very unique situation, and a bit of common sense started to come in, and people kind of worked together on it. Just on a real grassroots kind of thing, I started getting a lot of calls from businesses who were considered essential, like food stores and some other outlets that were allowed still operate, but they needed COVID screen set up. So people just started contacting me, asking me, could I do that? So we went into that for a very sort of short period of time. We started making COVID screens and fitting them for people. Started off with people I knew, and then the word kind of spread, and I got a bit more work doing it like that. So that was like probably less than 10% of our turnover, you know, kind of going, or even less, probably 5%. It kept us tipping over while the actual full lockdown was in place. And then as we started to see the bit of light at the end of the tunnel, then we started to ramp back up again. Thankfully, we had jobs in play that we were able to go straight back to. And we do know a lot of guys that, like, let's say subcontractors of mine that will be going into people's houses in particular, you know, doing 2 and 3 days, maybe floor fitting or things like that. And their businesses were devastated because people just didn't want them in their homes. And there was a lot of confusion going on that way. So there was a lot of ups and downs. I was in a fairly okay position in that I had sites that were like complete individual sites that I didn't have anybody living on the house in the buildings while we were working on them. And we were kind of able to self-contain the sites, and again put all those protocols in place. Going forward, we do have a decent pipeline. I would say that the time at home for people during lockdown was a very unique situation in that they were at home looking at the 4 walls of their house, suddenly realizing that they probably weren't making full use of their home. So on a domestic side, you start getting a lot of people calling, looking to see how much would it be maybe to, you know, make the downstairs of their house open plan, or maybe start putting in home offices and things like that. So there was a bit of you know, that sort of stuff going on. It's smaller stuff than maybe what the lads will be doing, but at my end, on the small to medium size, there was a lot of work like that going on. So that kind of is continuing into next year. There's a lot of people kind of talking about garden rooms and home offices and all those type of things. And I think people are maximizing, or want to maximize, the square meters of their house now. They're not happy to see, you know, the spare room just full of junk anymore. They're starting to clear those rooms out. They're starting to kind of win the house back a bit. So that type of stuff is going on. And then in terms of what I normally do day to day, which is kind of 500,000 up to 2.5 or 3 million type size jobs, there still is a significant amount of that going on at the moment. We did have 2 jobs cancelled on us as well, which has meant that we've had to rejig our pipeline a bit. But it's just transition for everybody, I suppose, and it's just about having to adapt and work with what's coming towards you, you know.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, Tomas, I actually skipped by the other side of your business, actually, while we were asking about impact on projects, because you're also dealing with, you touched on this technology company, HereWorks. Can you tell us a little bit about HereWorks and what were the effects of COVID on that business? Very different to the effects on the construction side.
They were much the same. I suppose HereWorks, first of all, it's the technology arm of McKeon Group. Primarily, we deal with smart building technologies and audiovisual. Basically, any technology that a user might interact with in a commercial building. But I suppose a lot of it is linked. You know, our big projects will be linked to large construction projects with the likes of structure tone and walls and a lot of the big players. They weren't on site, so our projects weren't on site. So from that point of view, it was very similar impact. We also have a lot of SLAs, and we have on site. We've people seconded into various clients as on-site support. They continued, but the level of calls just dropped to 0. So maybe you might say that was good, but we also we do have chargeable maintenance as well, so that dropped off. What we did do was we started a new project about this time last year. Again, we started a new R&D project called HereWorks Happy, which is actually our own human-centric platform for smart buildings. So it's a kind of a software as a service offering. And through the lockdown, we got so much headspace, and our engineers got so much headspace. We also leaned on our mechanical and electrical teams to actually collaborate and see what actually new can we bring to the market here. So I suppose over the last couple of months, we've actually spun that into a new company. We've got Enterprise Ireland funding, and we've been able to develop that. I actually think it was COVID nearly was a catalyst to kick our arse in gear and actually get really working on this. We've a new CTO, we've new app developers, so it's in that regard, COVID was actually a positive thing, because it didn't matter where we were based to actually develop that.
It does seem like that. I mean, a lot of people, for myself, even on the technology side, a lot of people have realized that this was just probably a little kick we needed. Like, eventually we needed to start looking seriously at a lot of these little areas and starting to put focus on it. Do you think the construction industry's view on technology has been accelerated by COVID as an industry as a whole?
Absolutely. And I think, I know we're here to talk about 2021. I think that is the big, digital transformation in construction has been slow to date. It's just the nature of the industry. And I think COVID, there's a couple of things, another positive thing actually that happened was that everyone started talking to one another. So, friends and competitors alike actually started collaborating and saying, how can we do things better? What are you doing? How are you going back to site safely? And there was a lot of that collaboration, and I hope that continues into 2021. But it also, people, I suppose, construction companies were forced into kind of the traditional digital transformation of actually getting technology so they can work remotely. So that was a big kick, and I think that'll continue. But also, real adoption of BIM and its concepts, and not just thinking that BIM is a Revit model, that BIM is is a whole new way of thinking and operating. And yeah, I think COVID again is a catalyst to keep that going. And
yeah, I tell you, I'm interested in. As you say, it's a community thing. People talk together. There's people, a lot of people on this call. Everyone in construction. Leslie, can you pop a poll together on that one? The construction industry. There you go. Let's see, can we get people involved here by just answering that quick question? And see who's actually either
who's awake.
And I imagine even systems like your own, Kieran. It's for for construction companies, large and small, my firm belief is that COVID certainly helped, because it gave people a little bit of headspace to actually say, look at my systems, what can I do better? How can I make myself more efficient?
I think one thing, I just building on that, what you're saying, I think one thing COVID certainly did was actually allowed people this space to look at their business, which is something that, you know, and I've said this numerous times, we have some of the best tradespeople, craftsmen, companies that can exist in our industry. But at the same time, and unfortunately, what the arena that I operate in, I get to see this on a regular basis. We also have some really, really poor business people. So, you know, when you mix in what are brilliant at what they do, but not necessarily at running their businesses, that does quite often end up in a scenario where you have people who do excellent work and don't get paid for it. Not in every instance, but it does happen. And I think what COVID did, and the space, we actually had people who now had the time to actually sit down, open the file. You know, it's not 1 o'clock in the morning when they finished working all day and they're coming in to price the job. They actually have the time. They've nothing else to do. And they started looking at their business. They started looking at, you know, why am I spending this money? Can I do this in a different way? You know, chasing money that they were outstanding for years that they hadn't a chance to go looking for, and different things like that. And it's certainly, I certainly think it's a positive. People did get to retune slightly in their business and in their that balance between their business and their normal life as well.
Yeah, I would tend to agree. I mean, there's results of the poll there coming in. Everyone should be able to see that. People would tend to agree with you, I think, is the consensus, Tomas, which is good. Keith, on that point then, I suppose, to get practical, as a business owner, we might still face these sort of contract disputes in 2021. I mean, we don't really know what the result of this really just yet. I mean, what can we do as businesses to get our house in order? Should a contract dispute arise in 2021?
Well, the first thing we have to do, and look, like I'm like a broken record when I do these things, because I end up saying the same things every time, and everyone kind of says, yeah, Keith, you said it the last time, and yet nobody seems to want to listen. Reading your contract is the number one thing you have to do. And, you know, it is just astounding, and it's beyond astounding, the amount of people who will sign their name to the bottom of a page of a 100-page document, you know, and look at the first page with the figure, and that's the figure, and that's the one that they know, I agree to that figure, and they'll put that on the first page, and then they'll jump to page 90 and they'll sign their name on it, and they will not read the 89 pages in between. And you know, data has so many problems in our industry. You know, every single day, there's not a week that goes by that someone doesn't come into this office and I have to explain to them what they've signed up to. I have to explain to them that, you know, what it means, what they've signed up to. And that's the starting point. And that will continue forever as long as people don't read contracts. Because, you know, contracting is survival of the fittest. It's a dog eat dog game. We all know it is. You know, the higher up the food chain, the more stuff you'll put in a contract to protect yourself against people lower down the food chain. That's the way contracting is all over the world. Nothing will change with that. So everybody has to kind of get that responsibility and start reading their contracts. Take force majeure. Force majeure is now off the table for COVID. Force majeure, if we get locked down in January again, let's say the construction industry doesn't manage to keep going for whatever reason, and we end up in a total lockdown, force majeure is no longer available for everybody because that event has already happened. It may be available to you if you're on the same contract, but on any new contract you've entered into, it's now a possibility of something that can happen. It's no longer a force majeure. How many people have made allowances in their contracts or changed their contracts on any new contracts to deal with the impact of a pandemic happening again? We got extensions of time first time around for force majeure. You might not get it second time around. So like, they're all issues that we have, and they go to the core of what people need to be doing. Paperwork is a huge problem. And, you know, businesses like yourself and Adjust and a few others who are moving with technology, they're vital to our industry because people do not know how to keep paperwork. They see it as a chore. They don't see it as a commercial necessity. And too many people operate their contracts on a basis that, oh, well, it's okay today. you know, everything's fine, I have a great relationship. You know, people only ever come to me when they have a problem. They don't come to me with the beautiful contracts and everything. They come to me when they haven't looked at them, when they haven't got paperwork, when they haven't got records, when they're telling me they've done everything and yet they can't prove anything. And they're all the things we have to change. And there's a lot of doom and gloom around, you know, what I do for a living and the stuff that we see, but there doesn't need to be, because it's quite simple to fix. And it's just a simple case of having a process, reading what you're signing, giving yourself time to do things, and just manage your business like Pat the Baker manages his, you know, just simple money in, money out, having that commercial astuteness, you know, not allowing people to owe you money for 60, 90, 120 days and do nothing about it. Just simple basics. You know, plan for the bad day, not the good day. And you're going to kind of get halfway there. And that's really what we need to do. We need to educate the industry to stop planning for the good day, plan for the bad day. And the day that bad day comes, you be in the best position to protect your own company. And really for 2021, that's the drum I'll keep banging as I have done for the last, you know. Let's hope
that there isn't too much. We sort of, with all due respect, hope you're not too busy next year. That's not good for us all. There's a fair few of us on the call here that are involved in housing and development. James, I've seen reports stating that we need to build a minimum average 36,000 new homes every year to 2030 to keep pace with population growth. Every year we miss that target. Housing prices are further compounded. Estimates of 2021 suggest around 22,000 homes could be delivered. How can we accelerate the delivery of new homes whilst at the same time making housing more affordable?
We'll need more than half an hour to finish off that question, Kieran. But I think we can make this as complicated or as straightforward as the situation calls for. You know, there's an affordability gap out there at the moment. So, you know, consumers can't afford to buy homes, and that's a consequence of supply demand issues. It's a consequence of increase in construction costs. When we need to look at the number of houses, we need to take stock of what we've delivered and why we've only delivered those numbers. Like this year, I'd say we'll get to about 20,000 homes, and I'd say that's very positive. You know, you have great aspirations for what could come in 2021. You know, to say that we hit 20,000, that's just probably a 5% drop in 2019 figures, given the year that's in it. That has to be deemed a success. You need to delve down into the figures though to actually see what the true story is there. When we look at 20,000 and figures of 21,000 last year, there was only about 6, 7, 8,000 of those homes that were available to the private market. Like we're looking at, you have to go back 50 years before you saw those low level of private homes available. So we've seen an increase, you know, and aspirations by the current government there to increase public housing, and you'd have to agree with that. You know, we do need more social housing, public housing, but we also need more rented accommodation. We need more private homes available. You know, we've 2 million, 40% of our population at the moment are caught between 40,000 and 90,000 combined income. They won't qualify for a social home. They're locked out of the market as it currently stands because they won't be able to afford a home under the current central bank rules. So we need to do something to try and unlock that vast number of average income couples that are just caught at the moment. They just can't enter into the market. Now, I'd say, thankfully, something that we've looked for a long number of years has been a shared equity scheme. And we saw this announced in the recent budget by the new government, and I would commend the new minister and the government for what they've done in the relatively short time since they've come into their new positions. That shared equity will have a phenomenal impact on what's going to be delivered in 2021, and even more so in 22 and 23 as the scheme progresses and suits. You know, you're going to see there where the state will take an equity share in the home, but it basically unlocks, it makes people be able to afford homes that they otherwise wouldn't. And we're likely to see that maybe in June, July of next year, but that will have a positive impact in 2021. All the lads have talked about it there. We've struggled with increasing construction costs right throughout the industry. The residential sector, you know, I suppose suffers a little more on this front because often on the development side of things, the builder is the client. So there isn't anywhere to go to try and recoup some of the additional costs that we face in this year. And unfortunately, that extra cost is going to be borne by the consumer, by the first time buyer or new home purchaser. So like we need to look at ways to try and reduce that cost. Now, too, as most people would be aware, like your biggest cost in delivery of any home is the soft costs, like the bricks and mortar up and down the country, whether you're delivering in Dublin or Cork or Kerry or in the West. The bricks and mortar side of it is pretty much the same, and that's whether you're delivering through your private scheme or the approved housing bodies delivering through turnkey acquisitions, or the local authorities themselves delivering through acquisitions or bills. The bricks and mortar are the same. It's when we look at the soft costs, that's where the big costs are. Like 52% of your average costs go to taxes, contributions, VAT, levies, you know, and complications that arise from the planning system. We need to look at ways to reduce those costs if we're going to be able to make it affordable for more consumers to be able to buy a new home.
But so is that the issue then, James, when we hear these debates around public versus private housing costs, and really that there's the home builder are demanding a premium, all that sort of talk, is that what we're talking then? It's a debate around true costs versus all-in costs.
Yeah, well, like this debate has rumbled on, I think, for years now at this stage, regardless of any number of professional body reports. We've seen the SCSI do a number of reports over the last number of years, independent consultants, everyone has given a number of reports there, all with the same answers. The biggest costs are in the soft costs, you know, what goes directly or indirectly to the state. It's quite simple. We don't see, when we hear these conversations about state-led delivery, or, you know, the inefficiencies that the private sector delivers and the cost of homes, we're not comparing like for like. I haven't seen one report that shows me the same house built at the same time, same location, you know, of the same specification. It's just not out there at the moment. So it's adding to confusion. Now, some people would gain from that misinformation as well and confusion, but quite simply, when you see private development, you see that accounts for the true cost of delivery, the development costs, soft costs, hard costs, everything is included in that. Often when we hear what it takes to deliver maybe through an approved housing body, through a turnkey project, you're only going to be seeing, you know, a number of those soft costs will be rebated or they won't be included at all. So your development contributions, which are significant, they're discounted or not included in a lot of cases. The cost of land isn't included within that. The administration, the consultants, the consultation fees required in that, they're not accounted for. So when we talk about the all-in costs that are associated with that type of delivery model, it doesn't account for the same comparison. So quite simply, we just need to be comparing like for like. That's not happening at the moment. You know, the local authorities have enough checks and balances in place to ensure when they purchase a home from a private development, you know, they're getting good value for money. So if we line up like for like, you know, there's good value there, and the private industry is more than efficient. So I think we need a bit of clarity around those conversations going forward. But planning is without doubt the biggest area where we can see efficiencies being brought into this that will give real bang for buck and be able to try and bring, you know, a lower house price, which is ultimately what we need. We need to be able to help consumers. Like, you know, John and Mary have a right to try and get a home, you know, to have that home ownership. We need certainty and speed brought into our planning system. You know, everyone on the call here, from Peter, Tomas, Keith, they've all dealt with this in some shape or form. You know, there's uncertainty that goes with the planning system as it is. We need a root and branch review of that planning system. And there's a number of, I suppose, investment areas that will require change, but administrative areas that could make very quick changes in the planning system that we have. And if we get that certainty, if we get that speed, you know, it will bring down the overall cost of delivery. You know, we can go somewhere towards getting to that 36,000, but we're a long way short of that at the moment. But I think we make good strides in 2021.
We've heard from everybody else sort of talking about their own personal businesses about the impact of COVID. What has been the impact in terms of our target this year? What are we likely to achieve?
Well, I think we're for the housing side, we'll see 20,000 this year, and that's a great move forward. I think, like I spoke with yourself probably in, I think it was March, April this year. There was a cloud over the sector. You know, projections from the experts would have said 14,000 for the end of the year. So to get to 20,000 has to be, you know, a signal to the work that's been done by the sector and those involved, and the good work done on the ground by all members and those in the wider industry. So I think that's a good way. Really, you know, I'd hope we can get to maybe mid-20s next year, and that's aspirational as much as anything, you know, because we have a lot of added complications. We've Brexit coming down the line. You know, there's going to be suppliers looking for increased money because of their own suppliers on that front. You know, there's qualifications, labour issues there. There are ongoing challenges that face the entire industry, not just the residential sector. We need to see how the vaccine will play out. How long will it take? You know, there's all these other areas that feed into not just the residential sector, but the wider construction industry. So I would hope we can make good strides, but like, it's not all going to happen in 1 year. It's not one simple change to planning, one simple change to the central bank macroprudential rules, one change to you know, the infrastructure deficits that we've seen over last year. That's not going to do. It's going to take a combination of changes to all those fronts. Like, we need to change the system. It's the system that's holding up delivery at the moment. So we need to see efficiencies within the system. So, but I think there's very strong signals that is going to happen in 2021. So I think we will. I would go into at the end of this year in a very positive mind frame, especially when we look and take stock of where we were 6 months ago.
Okay, so you're optimistic for 2021?
I think you have to be. When you look at the reaction from like any of the lads here, even on the call, of what they've done, you know, who, like, if we had said it was going to be a global pandemic this time last year, and, you know, we've really seen the strong companies come to the fore. You know, we've seen those going into areas that they wouldn't have been involved in. As Keith said, sometimes there's more to be gained from stepping back and seeing the woods from the trees, you know. So I think but that's a reflection of what everyone has done in the community of the construction industry that we've seen, that we talked about earlier on.
Yeah, I'm interested to hear. Let's do a little quick check and see if are people still awake. Leslie, can you put up a question on that? I'd be keen to hear the people share the optimism out there. I'd echo that personally, but I'd like to see what the general consensus is out there, and we can share that across the view. I'm just going to add in my own little vote here. Peter, you're due to kick off 16 homes in January. Was there any concerns of that project going ahead?
Yeah, there was. You can relax, James. I'm going to build 16 homes there. You can knock that 16 off your figure there. So we're going into development for the first time, and we have a site out in Malloy, County Meath, and we're you know, full steam ahead for January on that as well as going to be doing our ordinary work at the same time. I suppose I've listened to what everybody has said on the call here. It's been really interesting, actually, and I think a couple of things are going to change this year. We're all sitting here in our different offices or different areas, able to speak to each other. So I think that thing of having to travel halfway across the city to meet somebody is going to be reduced. I think that'll help us a little bit in terms of saving time. Brexit is going to be a huge issue, and contractually, I think Keith is really on the money there. I got stung a few years ago by doing exactly what he said there, by not reading the contract properly. And I suppose I read it, but I didn't really fully understand it. Ever since then, I've educated myself a bit more, and I go into each contract a bit stronger. I think those things are very, very important for all levels, from small builder right up to, you know, the big guys. You have to understand what you're signing yourself up for, or you end up having to battle your way out of it, which is never nice and is always costly. So look, we're positive for this year, but we're very aware of the challenges ahead. And I think, you know, this webinar has really raised a lot of them. Brexit, I think, is going to be a big question mark. We don't know what's going to happen there. Like, I've priced all the jobs that I'm going to be doing in the future based off current rates, and those material costs in particular are most likely going to go up. As soon as I start hearing it on the radio, I'm shaking my head driving along the road, listening to the radio going, oh no, here we go. That costs are going to start going up, and we've got certain rates in. So look, there's challenges ahead, but like, it is an exciting year. We've definitely looked at things in different ways. I think we've had the opportunity to streamline ourselves. We've had the opportunity to do stuff that we wouldn't have done previously within our businesses. So hopefully we make sure that the pipeline of work stays there, and look, you know, just stay strong and work together. I think that's a big thing. There was a little bit of you know, keeping a bit of privacy, or, you know, being protective about the way you do things within our industry, and I think that's going to change. Because I think we've all realised that if we work together, we are stronger within the construction community. So challenges ahead, but I would say it's positive ahead. And I just think we have to work smarter and work more together to be able to come through these challenges, you know?
Yep, I agree. There we go. There's the results in from that poll. I'm sure everyone can see that. Yeah, I think what we've discovered here is people are optimistic about what's coming up in the pipeline. I mean, given that, Tomas, given what James is basically saying, we should all pivot towards residential here. It looks great next year. You guys done a bit of residential this year, and is there any merit in a little pivot back and sort of put more focus on residential for McKeon?
Yeah, well, I mean, we're not developers per se, so we were obviously working for a developer. It's not in our strategy to develop at the moment, but we are certainly, I suppose, prior to last year, all our focus would have been commercial and public works. Yes, we would have built houses for the local authorities over the years, but certainly last year we said, look, we looking at what we felt was coming down the road in commercial, we felt there was going to be, less offices being built, less fit out. So we did, even prior to COVID, we were looking at the residential sector. And to be fair, we did look at a couple of developments, but to echo James and I suppose the whole industry's perspective, it's very risky. It's very risky business. To make a decent return on it, you really need a high number of houses. Unless you have that land cheap, because to me, I think that's the only that's the winning formula. If you had that land cheap for some reason, that's the only way you'll turn a pound on it, or you have a huge volume and it's a numbers game. So yes, we will look at it, but we will try to look for some friendly developers to work with rather than developing ourselves. But yeah, it'll be interesting to see how things pan out next year.
Excellent. Keith, what do you think? How does this play out next year? Are we looking at it? Are we yet to see the repercussions of this, or what do you predict?
I suppose the fear that we have, and I suppose, look, you speak to a lot of people in the industry. A lot of people are very positive. A lot of people have actually had very good 2020 in terms of their turnover, in terms of their projections. It hasn't been as bad. A lot of us are sitting here kind of saying, Jesus, we got through that a hell of a lot better than we thought when we were sitting here in March. So there is an element of that positivity going in. I suppose my fear, look, I'm the kind of the dark cloud on most of these calls, but the fear is always that all of that cost that has been built up in the industry that hasn't been paid for, all that COVID, all that delay, when all of the kind of assistance from government is withdrawn, and you look into the latter end of the first quarter of next year, you kind of do have this kind of like, are we going over a cliff, or are we just kind of hitting another steep curve in the road? It's just that fear of where is the cash going to be in the marketplace kind of towards the end of the second quarter next year, what the impact that will be on small business, on the flow of cash down through the supply chain. We're all receiving on a nearly weekly basis price increases for concrete, for installations, for, all of these. Like, I think one came in for concrete yesterday, 5.75% increases across the board. All of these are kicking into people in the first quarter of next year on what are, for a lot of businesses, tight enough margins as they are. So I suppose the fear I have is really, cash. The availability of cash, the flow of cash through the system. That's my fear. I'm not fearful of the ability of the industry to react. I'm not fearful of the ability to manage, and individual businesses to manage, but it's just whether the cash is there for the industry is really the big fear I have. But I'm positive. I'm a lot more positive now than I was when COVID kicked in. I've seen resilience that I didn't think the industry had, I have to say, to a large degree. There's levels of resilience there that and in certain companies that I just didn't see. I didn't foresee. I thought COVID would kill a number of the top 50 of contractors. I expected it to happen. I expected at least one of them to go under. It didn't happen, and that's a great thing for the industry. Because the knock-on repercussions of those things are all negative. So the hope being, if the cash is there, the industry gets to recover properly, the industry gets to grow, and hopefully that is the case.
Yeah, brilliant. We're coming toward the end, so I just want to leave a bit of time in case someone has any questions. So if you have got any questions, you can pop them in there down the bottom, little Q&A. There is one in here from Michael Joyce, and Michael, is obviously based off in the UK, and he's saying that in Britain costs are accelerating rapidly for materials. So assume the same in Ireland. How is construction dealing with this implication for fixed price contracts? So I'd imagine that that's probably something that's going to be targeted at probably Tomas or Peter. So how are you dealing with the implication? That probably relates to what you've just been talking about, Keith, but I mean, how are you dealing with the implication of materials rising on fixed price contracts?
You want me to take that, or?
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, so I suppose with contracts that are already signed, there's little or nothing we can do, unfortunately. But yeah, look, I mean, you just have to pass them on. There's no two ways about it on jobs we're tendering. We're conservative enough company in the sense that we don't really get to below cost pricing or any of that kind of messing. So yeah, we have very robust estimating system where the price lists go in, and yeah, if a price goes up, the price goes up. But unfortunately, on the contracts that are already live, yeah, you just have to suck it up. But that's part of, look, I mean, materials have been going up for years. I you know, for the last couple of years, I haven't seen a massive jump in the last couple of months, but it has been a steady, you know, over the last couple of years. But maybe perhaps, you know, come the 1st of January, yeah, I wouldn't be surprised to be a lot of surprises. But I didn't actually bring my crystal ball because well, Lord knows what's going to happen with Brexit. And I don't think. And funny, I was talking to Sean, our CFO there earlier, and you know, he was saying no one is less prepared than the UK themselves, you know, and that's, so I don't think suppliers over there, you know what they're doing. So
yeah,
it remains to be seen. Well,
we might be able to help you with this because there's a message, there's a question in there. Alan Hegarty, who's one of the sponsors from Clondalkin Building Providers, is just put out a 15% off offer for anyone here on this particular call. So there you go. There's that's going to soften the blow for any price increases in January. So Alan just put it out there. We'll forward that message on. So it's basically a 15% off any first order and any new accounts opened up. And he's basically given us some contact details there for Paul Nester. So we'll forward that out to everybody, and there you go. There's 15%. Soften any price increases for
pre-purchase all your concrete for the year ahead in the first order.
I think it's worth saying, Kieran, as well. Like, I think we're all probably a bit biased on here about the importance of construction, but you know, I think what has come to the fore in the last 6 months as well of the wider societal, I suppose, and importance of construction to the exchequer, for the money that goes into the exchequer from the construction sector is phenomenal, really. Like, and you saw it this year that you really had to see construction continue to operate, because even to take those off the PUP payments, you know, there was a huge outlay on that, the jobs that they create, you know, the return. I don't know if there was another sector that provides the same return from that as construction does. Like, for every, you know, we've done a number of studies on this, and even this year, you're talking for every million, I think it's 1.85 million in return goes into the exchequer. You're talking 1,200 different jobs directly related to that. We've 220,000 people working in the industry directly or indirectly. You know, I think that was recognised by the department, by the government as well, because, you know, you could sink money into things that weren't going to give a return, into a sinking ship almost in some respects. But to ensure that construction remained an essential service and invest in that, there was a clear return for the benefit. It wasn't just for any love lost on any particular sector. That's where the returns was and the value. You know, construction tends to get a bad rep in a lot of cases. We're the first ones to be criticised, and it's quite strange because it's hard to meet any family who doesn't have someone involved in construction in some shape or form. So I think the importance of the construction sector to the exchequer, to the wider country, I think that has changed dramatically since, you know, previous bad 2000. So I think we've taken away that speculative nature that was there before. So I think we've rebuilt and adapted. So I think it's important to remind people of.
Yeah, well said. Let's bring it to a close then. In a couple of words, what's 2021? What will be the result of 21? Let's say we're fast forward this 12 months. How do you feel this is going to play out? So in a couple of words, let's throw it around. Tomas?
was going to say holidays.
Catching up to do there.
No, I think it's going to. I think that digital transformation for the construction industry will really be accelerated.
Yeah, Keith.
Hopefully people will just be more prepared, just commercially be more prepared, be more educated, and you know, an educated workforce will mean that I'm not busy and I'm happy to do that. So be prepared and be educated.
Yeah, Peter.
Yeah, I was just agree with what the two lads said there. I think we're going to be more streamlined. I think every person now knows how to use, you know, technology a little bit better because of this. Likes of your own live costs, I think, are going to start becoming very important for people as well, to streamline every single thing you've got to do in your business. So I think I resonate with the boys there. Be prepared and be ready for some challenges, but at least we're here talking about a busy year ahead. We could be very easily sitting here, you know, which we have in previous years where there was nothing ahead of us. So I've got energy and I'm willing to use it, and I want to try and do it in a smart way.
Yeah, last word on to you, James. So
I think we'll see more of the same from the sector and the industry. Look, we'll continue to adapt and move forward, and just hope that the wider stakeholders and everyone involved in this sort of recognises ourselves as part of the solution and not the problem. So I think we'll just see that continued adaptation that we've always seen from the sector.
Brilliant. Lads, appreciate your time. Really, it's this, as I said at the outset of this, the goal is this as each one of you individually touched on. The truth is there is definitely a community type of thing starting to happen. I think COVID's accelerated that as well, sharing information, and all we're trying to do there is provide a platform to bring people together to just give some sort of insights and some sort of help. So we'll continue to do this as much as we can, and I do appreciate you all coming on, giving your time to this. Last word out to the guys who have sponsor this and have really helped us put this together, and that's the CIF and Clondalkin Building Providers. I do thank you all, and we will send that offer out that Clondalkin put on for the day as well. So lads, thanks very much for your time, and I wish you all the best and a happy Christmas.